Good evening. How are we doing, directors? Good evening. I will now call the June 16th, 2026 meeting of the Ben Lapine School Board of Directors to order. I would like to introduce my participants this evening. My immediate left is Vice Chair Amy Tatum, Directors Cameron Fisher, Keena Chadwick, Jen Lynch, and Shirley Olson. Director Ross Tomlin joining virtually. To my immediate right, Superintendent Dr. Stephen Cook, and Deputy Superintendent, she's joining virtually as well. Okay, as well. And Board Clerk Janet Bochanowski, and I am Marcus LeGrand, Chair of the Board. Will you please stand, remove your hats, and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now move to agenda item number 3, review of the agenda. Dr. Cook, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Cook. Fellow board members, are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing no changes, we will proceed to our agenda as we have it. All right. And now I'm going to have it over to Dr. Cook for our district recognitions. Oh, so actually, we're going to hear from Jamie Goldman, and the Ben Lapine Educational Foundation. So all you need to do is just turn the mic on and go from there. Okay.
So fancy. Hi, my name is Jamie Goldman, and this is Ann Westerhoff. We are the co-chairs of the Ben Lapine Education Foundation. We have just a short little slideshow to talk about all of the awesome contributions we were able to make to the Ben Lapine schools this year. And this is my clicker. There we go. So this is just our board and a whole bunch of different check presentations that we were able to do this year, both giving away money and receiving money. This year we gave out almost $100,000 in classroom enrichments to teachers and students in the school district. So these are just some pictures highlighting the awesomeness that the teachers do with our students every day.
And just an FYI, we were able to fund 107 of the 114 applications that we did receive, and we were able to impact approximately 13,600 students with these enrichments.
Our biggest fundraiser of the year is Trivia Night 2026. Right there in the front and center is the awesome IT department here at the district building. And this year was our record-breaking year. About $70,000 was raised. That's amazing. Perseverance Awards, we work with the Mayantiga Foundation to fund the Axel F. Hoke Legacy Scholarships. This year we were able to fund 12 students with essentially their final dollar scholarships. So we will have 31 students enrolled in local Oregon post-secondary schools this fall, which is pretty remarkable. So that was our celebration. And that is the gist of it. And so now we would love to do a check presentation to the board. So we'd love to do a picture if you guys don't mind. So we are presenting the Ben Lapine Schools $352,000.
Thank you again for that. It really means a lot. Thank you for all the support that you give for our teachers and the students in our district. It really means a lot. Excuse me. Oh, no. Water. That's the time we play the song, Let Me Clear My Throat. Anyway, Dr. Cook, we now present our Champions for Students and our Above and Beyond the Call of Duty Awards. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair LeGrand. Excited that we get to close out our school year this year with 2 awards. And I'm just wondering how much of that $350,000 our IT team donated in their trivia competition. Either way you win, lose, thanks for participating. So, all right, we're going to start with our Champion for Students Award for the month of June. I am so honored to present the final Champion for Students Award of the school year to a member of the Pacific Crest Middle School community, PE teacher and coach Ashley Wallace. Could you please come join me? Ashley's nomination came from 7th grade science and design and modeling teacher Jane Shane, who reshared Ashley Wallace is an expert teacher who makes all students feel welcomed in her class, which is an amazing feat in PE. She has very high standards and inspires students to do their best, to inspire them to work together, and teaches sportsmanship and fair play above all. Ashley is also our head track coach and has built a program of more than 200 athletes. I have sat in countless parent meetings with Ashley and always appreciate her insight and her ability to see the best in every student. She is such an incredible advocate for her students and is responsible for building an inclusive culture at Pacific Crest Middle School. All right. So, Ashley, let me produce this for you. On behalf of Ben Lapine Schools, we are recognizing you for your leadership, your commitment, and your dedication to students fostering an inclusive and supportive culture at Pacific Crest Middle School. Through excellence in physical education and coaching, you inspire students to strive for their best while emphasizing teamwork, sportsmanship, and character. You create opportunities for every student to feel welcomed and valued. Your advocacy for students' thoughtful collaboration with families and staff and positive influence throughout the school community exemplifies the very best of education. Ben Lapine Schools is extremely proud to honor you as a true champion for students. Okay, now clap. Okay. How about we get a photo? Would you guys mind coming up? Both, yep, come on up. Right over here. Let's go right over here. All right, one more hand for Ashley. Thank you, Ashley. All right, our second award is not a Champion for Students award. It is, as you know, it's called the ABCD Award, which stands for Above and Beyond the Call of Duty. And at this time, I would like to ask John Horvath, one of our SROs, to come and join me up front. You can clap for him. Hey, John. All right. Next to me is the school resource officer for Ben Tech Academy, Ben Senior High School, and the other Eastside schools, Officer John Horvath. John just completed his second year as one of our SROs, and in that short time, he has become a very important part of our school communities. From day one, he jumped right into the school culture, whether it was shaking pom-poms alongside staff and helping welcoming the football team onto the field, or simply being present for students every single day. His approachable personality and genuine commitments to our schools quickly earned the trust and respect of both students and staff. This spring, John demonstrated that same commitment in a deeply meaningful way. After noticing a collection of broken and abandoned bicycles at Ben Tech Academy, he took it upon himself to gather them, purchase parts, and spend his own personal time repairing and rebuilding the bikes. Once restored, he quietly donated them all to students who could benefit from reliable transportation. Thank you, John. No, not yet. Hold on. Got to read the certificate to you, and then we'll clap. Let's work this way up on this one. All right, John, your certificate says, Benton LaPine Schools recognizes you for your exceptional dedication to students and families. After noticing broken and abandoned bicycles at Ben Tech Academy, you devoted personal time and resources to collecting, repairing, and rebuilding them before donating the bikes back to BTA and Ben Senior High School students who needed them most. Your compassion, generosity, and commitment to helping students overcome barriers reflect the very best of Ben LaPine Schools. In recognition of your extraordinary service and dedication to others, we are honored to present you with the Above and Beyond the Call of Duty Award.
Thank you.
Now we clap. Can we get a photo? Yeah.
I have to thank my wife for allowing me to bring the bicycles home because I have a bit of a bicycle problem and she wasn't super stoked to have a bunch more bicycles at the house. So thank you.
Okay. Can we get a photo? Can we get her to come up too?
Jessica.
Yeah, for a photo. Yeah, let's have you over here, John. Her right next to you.
You're doing great.
You want to talk? You can. All right, one more round of applause for John. Thank you. And that concludes our celebrations for today and for our 25-26 school year.
All right, thank you, Dr. Cook, and thank you all the people who did the great work in our schools. Appreciate you very, very much. Next is public comment. The board and district leadership value communication from students, families, staff, and community members as it helps to guide the work of Ben LaPine Schools. Public comment is just one of those many avenues available to ensure this connection. Many of the public may always submit thoughts, questions, or concerns to the board via email or as well as in writing. Individual board members also make themselves available for phone, video, and in-person conversations. This said, I want to remind the public that while this is a meeting of the board of directors that takes place in public, it is not a meeting with the public. It is a meeting of the board of directors to conduct business. As soon as the board will not respond to public comment made during tonight's meeting. Instead, issues may be recorded and referred to the appropriate or the proper staff person to follow up with you. We will now open for public comment. Our policy is typically allows up to 2 minutes per speaker until the time cap has been reached for the agendized item. A timer is provided on the large screens up above and surrounding you to ensure every speaker receives up-to-date updates during the presentation of remaining time. If the speaker goes over time or if the speaker's message is not in adherence with our policies, for example, being personally directed, abusive, discriminatory, repetitive, or off-topic, I may ask the speaker to cease and terminate the speaker's privilege to address the board. At this time, I will now call, is it Marlene Hunchberger? I believe, is that correct? Yeah. Okay, thank you. All you need to do is press the button, the green light will come on, try to be as close to the mic as you can or bring it close to your face so we can definitely hear you. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Tonight, I'm here to talk about transparency, specifically the gap between what families are told about the My Future, My Choice curriculum and what it actually says inside 807 pages. Parents technically can access the material, but in reality, the information is scattered across 12 lessons, each with its own slide deck, worksheet, and embedded activities. There is no single clear parent-facing document that shows the full wording students will see. And that is the core issue, not access, but clarity, and not availability, but transparency. The public curriculum page lists only lesson titles. It does not show the actual slides, the scripts, the activities, or the explicit sexual wording and instructions used in the classrooms. Parents must spend hours digging through 807 pages to find out the content that matters most. And here is the most disturbing truth. Some of the explicit sexual instructions and wording in those lessons cannot be spoken aloud in this public meeting without violating your own decency rules. I cannot quote it, display it, or hand it out, yet it is allowed in the 6th grade curriculum. This is unacceptable. If the district believes this curriculum is appropriate, then it should be willing to show all the actual slides. If the content is suitable for 6th graders, then it should be suitable to be presented here in this public meeting. If it cannot be spoken aloud in this room, there are serious problems, then the board has a responsibility to confront that reality honestly. So tonight, I am urging you to take another hard and honest look at the My Future, My Choice curriculum. I am asking you to stop teaching it until it's reviewed again, especially lessons 4 and 6. These lessons contain material far beyond the 6th grade's developmental readiness to grasp, and no board member should allow that level of content to be hidden behind vague, surface-level summaries. Please do the right thing, review it again, remove it from our classrooms. And one last comment. I've handed 4 letters to you over the last
Thank you for
several
your
days.
comments, ma'am. We already received those letters. We thank you for that information. Point of clarification. I got a point of clarity question. What schools is your kid currently in?
So I have kids in 3 different schools.
Okay,
here in
thank you
Bend.
for that information. Appreciate it. Next, we will have Sherry Frey. Is that correct? I want to make sure I don't say it. Sherry Fry. Thank you very much for that correction.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much.
No worries.
I was a substitute teacher here for Bend La Pine from 2007 through 2020. Okay, we're watching a dramatic shift in our community. Deschutes County has seen a 200 increase in homeschooling since 2020. Parents are not leaving because they don't value education. They're leaving because they can no longer trust what is being taught or what is hidden in our classrooms. At the center of this concern, as Marlene said, was the My Future, My Choice sex ed program for the 6th grade class. 2 lessons, lesson 4, SOGI, lesson 6, postponing sexual involvement. Lesson 4, with the sexual orientation and gender identity expression for 11 and 12s, as Marlene suggested, it's not appropriate. Their cognitive development in their frontal lobe has not developed yet. They're still young children who cannot grasp these adult concepts. And it's not fair to the child. Lesson 6 crosses the line. It is, the lesson 6 says it's postponing sexual involvement, but instead, slide 5 tells you exactly the 4 types of sex. This is not health education, it's not prevention, it's not age appropriate. This is instructional exposure to sexual acts for children who are barely out of elementary school. Parents deserve real transparency. If real transparency was shown, parents could have a clear view of what is being taught in the sex ed program.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. Our next person is Brooke. I want to make sure I'm saying this right. Is it Muse? Muse. Thank you very much for that correction. I appreciate it. Thank you, Brooke. No worries.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Bend La Pine School Board. My name is Brooke Muse. I'm a parent of this district and a co-founder of Well Wired, Bend's Healthy Tech Advocacy Group. I'm here to thank you again, as so many parents have, for passing Resolution 2013 and making real change happen in this district related to educational technology. My being here today is significant because it was 2 years ago today, on June 18th, 2024, when Well-Wired and child psychologist Wendy Lockman presented to this board a letter of concern signed by over 135 local pediatricians and child health care professionals, urging the district to reevaluate things and to specifically remove iPads from the youngest grades, and also to set age-appropriate screen time limits for students during the school year. So far, those changes have not been made, and 2 years is a lot of years when we're talking about the critical and fundamental years of elementary school. If these changes don't go into effect next year, that's half of a child's elementary school career with too much time on screen, which research is showing time and time again is ineffective and unhealthy for our youngest learners. As parents, we hear day to day about what our kids are doing at school, how much time they're spending on their iPads, and at Well-Wired, we hear a lot of more troubling stories about misuse. Just 2 weeks ago, a parent shared that their child's Apple Screen Time app, on their 4th grade child's app, reported 20 hours of screen time use in 4 days. And Apple categorized that time as 16 hours of entertainment time and 4 hours of educational time. So real change is needed now, and we hope that you take 2013, the resolution, seriously and enact this change in the next school year. We know that this can happen. We see other districts doing this all across the country and across the globe. Specifically, we're looking for you to next year remove one-to-one iPads from the youngest grades, setting screen time limits by grade band, and to remove AI chatbots and Magic School AI from iPads. Thank you for your work on this and for holding the district accountable. Thank you.
Hold on real quick, Rick, before you go. Make sure you go take a look at our last board meeting. It gives you an extensive presentation on what we're going to be doing with technology. So hopefully that'll be able to give you some clarity on what we're getting ready to do.
Yeah.
And then we're going to keep having those discussions as well. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Next, Debbie Allison.
Is it still green? If it's green, it's on? Okay. Thank you, board members, for this chance to speak. I'm a part of the group here. I'm here today because our 6th graders, 11 and 12-year-old children, are being taught material that is far beyond their developmental stage. I want to focus on 2 lessons in My Future, My Choice curriculum, which is Lesson 4, SOGI, Lesson 6, Postponing Sexual Involvement. Lesson 4 introduces SOGI, sexual orientation and gender identity and expression, to children who are still forming their basic sense of self. At age 11, students are concrete thinkers. They are not developmentally ready to navigate layered identity frameworks, labels, or abstract constructs about orientation and gender expression. Instead of supporting healthy development, this lesson creates confusion, pressure to self-identify, and emotional stress in students who are simply not ready for these concepts. But Lesson 6 is where the curriculum crosses a line that no 6th grade classroom should ever cross. Lesson 6 is titled Postponing Sexual Involvement, yet slide number 5 explicitly instructs students on the 4 types of sex. This is not prevention, this is not safety, this is not age-appropriate health education. This is instructional exposure to sexual acts for children who are barely out of elementary school. No parent expects their 11 and 12-year-old to be taught categories of sexual activity in a classroom. No teacher should be put in the position of delivering it, and no district should defend it. We can talk about health, boundaries, respect, and safety without introducing instructional sexual acts, sexual identities, or adult relational frameworks to children who are still learning how to open a locker. This curriculum is not protecting our kids, it is sexualizing them and considered grooming. Since we rate last in the nation for reading and math, maybe the state should concentrate more on those 2 subjects versus an instructional sex class. One last thing. I was a court-appointed advocate for CASA.
I want to thank you for your time. Appreciate today. I want to thank you all for being here today. Thank you for public comment. Appreciate it very, very much. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it so much. Hold on really quick. As we stated in the beginning, if you want to set up an appointment with individual board members to be able to have a conversation, please make sure you email us specifically to be able to do that.
I've done it 4 times.
You know, you wrote us a letter 4 times. Here's the thing I want you to understand. Just because you wrote us a letter does not request that you can actually come meet this. Actually do it individually to us so we can definitely have that conversation. Okay? Thank you. Appreciate your time. All right. Now, we were going to move to the consent agenda. Is there any discussion regarding the documents of the consent agenda, directors? Thank you. Board members, we now move to consent agenda. Is there any discussion regarding the documents of the consent agenda? I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been first and seconded. Now I will call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. The ayes have it. Okay. And now we're going to be moving to agenda item number 7, which is consent for information. And now we'll turn it over to Dr. Cook for the consent for information.
Thank you, Chair LeGrand. In this month's consent for information, there are 2 reports. The first one is the annual Equity Coalition update. If you recall, the Equity Coalition is statutorily obligated for all districts in the state of Oregon to provide an environment for districts to interface with populations that sometimes don't have a seat at the table. And we have had an Equity Coalition now for many years, even prior to that statute becoming law. And so what you have in the consent for information is the report on that, as well as some follow-up comments that are in relationship to our last board meeting. And I would draw specific attention to quite a few pretty deep district answers to lots of information that was presented in the May board meeting. And just one exciting note that we now do have our sustainability coordinator position filled, and we're quite excited to have that position up and running, and she has been on site doing her work for a little over a couple of weeks now. So I'm glad to answer any questions you might have to either of those topics.
I have a question about the sustainability coordinator. How has that job description changed from the past job description? In a nutshell, if you can.
I think in a nutshell, it's got a broader scope of work, number one. Number two, it's more systems focused, like work that's not necessarily focused on impacting student classrooms, while that's still a piece of the work, but also like how are there actual ways to interface with our maintenance department and with individuals in our maintenance department, individuals in our facilities department, and ways to interact on the goals that we have in the executive limitations and in putting those into play. And so when that job description was completed after multiple analyses, that job description moved that role up to a coordinator level role. And so, yeah. I think that's a higher leveled position for a district our size. It's not, I think a couple of months ago, we had some requests about whether or not we were posting it as a director, and it was not posted as a director, but it's not an administrative position, but it is a professional technical position that's posted in our classified bargaining unit.
Got it, thank you.
And Dr. Cook, I just wanted to mention that I'm really happy to see that the position for the world language teacher in La Pine is up to a full FTE, so that hopefully that'll really help with the recruitment process, and we can have a world language teacher in La Pine.
Thank you for sharing that, Director Tomlin. It is, I will tell you, that position is posted. It is not filled yet. We are hopeful, and we're doing everything we can to try to find people to recruit into that role. So thank you for bringing that to your attention.
Okay, I have one more question to follow up with his thought. Thanks for bringing that up, Ross. For the recruitment process, is it, and I'm kind of unclear how this works, is it possible to do an emergency certification or something like that, or some sort of connection with Grow Your Own with our other maybe Spanish support staff, speaking support staff, something like that?
All of those are options. I can tell you that part of what we want to make sure of is that we find somebody that's capable of instructing our students. I think there's some challenges right now of it's a position in South County, and what we were struggling with earlier was finding people that are willing to drive into South County. that don't already live there. And so we have flexibility. We don't necessarily want to just find a body, if you will. We want to find somebody that's right for our students. And hopefully this, elevating it to a 1.0 makes it a much more attractive position, most certainly.
Absolutely, thank you, yeah.
Directors, any other questions? Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. Cook. Cool. Dr. Burke, you ready? Okay, thank you. And now we'll turn it over to Dr. Burke to basically go over our ACR. Is that correct? Yep.
Yes, yes. So thank you. I was asked to do a presentation regarding the process that we go through for what are called area change requests, most commonly referred to as ACRs. So I put together this slide deck at a very sort of high level, so I'll kind of walk through it. Also, what is accompanying it is a report that has a lot more specific data. So if folks, if they have specifics that they want to dig into, they can go into the report, or of course they could ask, you know, a specific question that we could get answers to as we move through this process. So I'll dive in, and then I'll do my very best to answer questions at the end. Okay, Janet, next slide. So the area change request is a process that is happening in Ben Lapine. Many school districts do not have a process that's similar to this, but we have this in place, which allows a parent or guardian to request that their child attend a school outside of the attendance area that is assigned to their home. So there's a board policy there's a policy that goes with it, and kind of a process that we utilize. And it has changed over time. So at one point in our district's past, anybody who signed up for an area change request, it was done with the principals. So the principals had this just kind of swap that they did. This is several years ago now. And that really didn't support a couple of things, primarily the need to balance schools. And it really allowed for us to not have consistency on which area requests we allowed and which we did not. So I'll go through some of the criteria that we use now, some of the nomenclature, which is unique to this process, and then some of the data that we look at, how this sort of shows up in our system, and then what we're thinking about as we move into the future. So next slide. These are the considerations that we use when we are going through our area change requests that come in. So the main thing to know, like the primary thing that happens within what we consider, is related to balanced enrollment. That is our primary interest. So when we say balanced enrollment, we want to stay within 5% of any one of our schools at every grade level. And so that is important, particularly as we move into high school, when we start to look at high school size equating to different programs that they enter into related to OSAA or athletics or activities. So if we had one school that's like in a 6A conference versus another school that's a 5A conference, that produces different challenges that are sort of untenable for a district. So balanced enrollment is the primary interest into this process. The very first thing that we consider following that is the timely application. So in this case, our very first priority window usually moves through the first 3 weeks of January. And so if people get their request in within that time frame, then they will be considered in this process. That does not mean, and this is something that sometimes people think of, those who've participated in like Kids Inc. programs and stuff, you know, when they open up, it's sort of like everybody is in there as fast as possible. For us, it is anybody who enters within that timeline. So it's not like you have more priority if you got in January 4th than if you got in January 22nd. That is the window by which you need to get in to be considered within this process. Number two is a mid-year move. So sometimes we have a student who has been approved to attend a school outside of their area, their home area boundary. So let's pretend this student is a second grader. And throughout their second grade year, they move into a different boundary. And they would prefer to remain at their school that they are part of and have been part of for the last 3 years. We would continue to grant that. We do ask that the family fill out an ACR. This is unrelated to the timely process, but we do ask that they fill out an ACR just so that we have a tracking mechanism to recognize when that move occurred and that they were approved. But the important thing to remember within an ACR process is that we do this at a level band. So if a student gets into a school in kindergarten, we would assume that that student would stay at that school until they leave the next level. So the next level that they might apply for an area change request or choose to go to their home boundary school is at the middle school level. So they would be at this new place, kindergarten through 5th grade. And that happens at every grade level. The next thing that we consider is if your parent or guardian is an employee of Ben Lopine Schools. So that is, a perk, so to speak, of working for Ben Lopine Schools. And we ask that families indicate that if that is appropriate for them. The next thing is siblings. So if you have a sibling that will also be at that new school for that duration of time, then we consider that as well. The main factor in that is that families that participate in area change requests, the majority of them have to provide transportation. We do have some routes within our busing system that allow for families to kind of get closer, or the students to get closer to their new school that they are part of. But what we know is if a family is actually driving their child, it becomes less and less realistic for them to drive one child to one school and another to the other school, particularly if they are starting at the same school start time. So if you have a sibling that will also be part of that level, we take that into consideration. The next has to do with a course of study. So this is more of an indicator than a true big trigger. And what we mean by that is that a course of study, for example, if you really would like to be part of storyline education, then you can indicate that. If you, and that's sort of a bad example. If you really want to be part of the Tech Magnet and you really want to be part of that technology course of study, then you might indicate that. But that tends to be, as we move down this list, that tends to be less and less of a factor. Other extenuating factors are really diverse and really unique to each situation. Sometimes I'm trying to think of a good example of that. Sometimes we would have a student who is, perhaps they are new to the country, they are in a very unique space with their language needs, and there's a match that is particular to that need at a school. That's something that we might consider, and that would be very unique. That's not a ubiquitous example, but these are all very unique when we think of other extenuating factors. And families tend to list all kinds of things as they create a request. All right, next slide. Factors not considered. So if your family, this is just those stars at the bottom, if you have a mid-year change that you just all of a sudden halfway through the year you want to change schools, that is not something that we are putting into the mix, primarily because we know that disruption mid-year is really challenging for students for their course of study, for schools to manage different course loads, and ultimately it's just a disruption in an education pathway. And so mid-year changes or the request to change at semester is not something that we entertain. We say once you have accepted and you are part of this, you are part of that for the band that you are of schooling. So 9 through 12, 6 through 8, and K through 5. One other area, the top other area, and an area that really is probably hits our high schools more than anything is athletics. People really want to go to certain schools based on what they believe their child's access to athletics is, or interest in athletics, and that is not a factor that we are considering within area change requests. Sometimes we have folks who say, actually, this is very common. We'll have families that will say, hey, my child really needs to go to this school because their friends are there. And that's just not a luxury that we have to be able to make that as our main consideration within this process. And then finally, one thing that comes up with a fair amount of frequency is people will indicate that they have a sibling, but really when we dig into it, their sibling has already graduated, or their sibling, if it's a middle school, now the sibling is now an 11th grader or a 10th grader, or not going to be there the following year. And thus that does not describe you as a sibling. Again, with the reference being siblings is related to this recognition that there's a transportation need likely. And so that consideration for sort of my sibling went there one time is not really what we're talking about when we're factoring in considerations for area change requests. Next slide. Here are some big dates that are related to area change requests, and these I'll just indicate will be changing into our future for a couple of reasons that I'll go into. So the very first date that opens is January. So we open about 3-week window in January, and that's what we call our priority window. And so anybody who gets their information in, they are considered in that kind of first round of area change requests. Right now, what we have is we have a system where we keep everybody in the same I'm going to say the word lottery. It's not exactly a lottery, the same draw. And so then it just lives, families are living in this big, long kind of, I don't know, purgatory, or sort of this wait list. They all refer to it as a wait list. And then we continue to review it throughout our spring. So right now we review in May, we review in June, we review in August. And the reason for that, and the reason that we're able to make some moves along the way, is because families will move into different areas, or just we're able to kind of become more finite with what sort of room we have. And there are problems with that I'll talk about in just a moment. The other piece that is important to know within this is vocabulary. So vocabulary really that is important to the area change requests lives within one of these bullets. So pending, offered, offer accepted, declined, denied, waitlist, and canceled. So pending, I'm going to go into these for just a moment because I do think they're really important. So the first one is pending. That means that somebody has submitted an application. We know it's there, but it is under review. And the reason we have to have every application under review is because people will indicate all kinds of different things on their area change request that are inaccurate. So they might say, I'm a sibling. And when we look into it, they are not a sibling. Or they might say, I'm a parent, I work for Ben Lapine Schools. And when we dig into that, that is inaccurate. Or they'll leave those blank, but then in an area that is related to notes, they'll put in a narrative that includes things like, hey, I'm an employee, or I have an older child at this school, and yet they hadn't clicked into our system that they have a sibling or they are an employee. And so we really have to go through each of these with a fine-tooth comb. And so it's a pretty big administrative task on the front end. But pending just means that you've submitted something and we are still looking at it under review. Then it can move into offered. Offered it means that an offer has been extended but not yet accepted by the parent. So in our system, it will say offered, and the family can either say, yes, that's something I want to do, or no. Offer accepted That is if the request is approved by the guardian and they accept that new school request. Declined is that we extended an offer, but the parent declined the offer. This happens sort of automatically also within our system, because what we see is that a family can request multiple different schools. And so once they accept an offer at one, the others are declined. Denied means that the request does not meet those priority criteria. So it didn't come in the correct timeline, or it just doesn't have enough information. Wait list. This is an area that gives us the most challenge. And this is part of the reason that we're looking to make some changes into the future. Waitlist is a term that is used by the system, the Synergy system. And we've in fact asked for that term to be changed because if you're like me, when you see something that says I'm on a wait list, the first thing I want to know is what's my number on the wait list? Where am I on the wait list? How long until I know if I'm going to be given a spot or not? And that is not how our system is running. We do not have a true lottery where the computer is just allowing things to happen. Each one of those are done individually based on whatever spots we see open. And so what that means is that a family could be on a wait list really for all of this time, but when it comes time to have there's an opening at a particular school, it's not like we have all of those students listed in this clean list, because they can be in multiple different schools at any given time. And each of the reasons that they have demonstrated that there's sort of an exceptionality within their request is taken into account. So wait list only means that you have not gotten into another place. You haven't been offered or declined. So really that puts families in this spot where they're living in this idea of wait list, but there's not a number that they land on, and there's not like a clarity of when things are going to change for them. And so they live for this really long time in this area that's really gray, and it produces a lot of frustration for us too. And so that's why we've requested some change in language. But they've said, no, this is the language that's going to be happening. So I'll talk about that in just a minute. Last is canceled. So if a student has applied for multiple schools, a placement is accepted, all the others are canceled if the family hasn't already declined something. So Janet, in that next slide, it sort of walks through those areas. So you can see an ACR comes into the system, and then they sort of walk through all of these different options. All right, next slide. So this is what it looks like in action. We have about 7% of our students at any given time are participating in area change requests. And here are the reasons for which a student might be accepted or not. If you notice over time, the number of ACRs that have been accepted has declined. And that has been hand in hand with our declining enrollment and declining opportunities for there to just be ample spots for people to go. So it's important to know that the January deadline is really important for this system, because once we finalize things out of the January requests, following that in late February and early March, depending on when the legislature finalizes budget, that's when we do staffing plans, and these are the numbers that we staff on. So any changes that happen to our numbers after we've already delivered staffing plans and the number of staff that a school will have, it really minimizes our ability to then make big changes, because we know we will have students move into our area from March to August into their actual school zone. So we know that there will be some students that will be new to the system just by virtue of moving in. But if we are just sort of easy about saying, yeah, go wherever you want, then we aren't able to plan appropriately, and we aren't able to order things like curriculum and get staff ready for the grade levels or courses that they may be teaching. You'll notice one piece that is on this slide that talks about close to parents' work. That is something that families indicate, and sometimes for our youngest elementary schools, that's something that we're able to take into account because childcare is a factor that we just need to think about. That is less prevalent as we go into middle and high school, and there's less of a need for that. But families, that tends to be something that families indicate to us on the area change request form. And then you'll notice here moving, that's something that I talked about earlier that really we're tracking just for the ability to make sure that we have kind of a paper trail there. All right, next slide. Okay, so here are our next steps. There's a lot of information here. So as I said, when you think of a lottery, you think of kind of the computer system just pulls out and says, here's the number that can go, we're sort of done. That happens in our choice schools. So when we start this, it all kind of falls under the umbrella of choice, or area change requests fall under this idea of choice, but we really have 3 areas. At that time, we have kindergartners. The next area is choice options. So that includes things like Highland, Amity. And then we have ACRs. So that's like, I want to go to Ensworth. I want to go to Buckingham. Okay, so all of those are handled differently. Choice options are a true lottery because there's a very specific number of seats. And so when we have a very specific number of seats, we know that we can employ a true lottery. And so families enter their information. We still go through the administrative task of kind of curating all of that information, making sure it's accurate. But then on that day that things close, they literally push a button and run a lottery. That is not the case for our ACRs. Our ACRs, they end that same time, but then each level takes a look at all of the students that are in there, and we start to say, okay, for students who have family members that are part of Ben Lapine, how many are those? Okay, then we make those changes, and then we look at how things settle. Then we look at which students have siblings. Then we look at things settling down. Then we look at, are there other sort of very specific things that come to mind, like, is there a course of study that's really important? Or are there flops that we can do that are like one-to-one changes? Again, the idea is to stay within that 5% of any given class. So because we don't run a true lottery, because we don't have the specific number of seats, and we allow people to choose many spaces, it really sets us up to have these pretty broad times of administrative tasks related to who gets in when. And it just makes everything slower. So our hope would be that we can curate that and line up how many slots we have so that our ACR process can look more like a lottery. And we're working with the vendor to be able to figure out how to do that. As I said, for the choice options, because we have a very finite number, we're able to do that with relative ease. And then what happens at the choice options is then they are living on a true lottery. Like, they do have a number on the wait list that they are part of. That's different than our ACR process. So the second bullet is that nomenclature change. It is important that we make a change to this idea of wait list, because A, it's not a true wait list at the ACR process, and B, it just produces a ton of frustration for families, and it's not real. It makes people think that they're like next in line, when that is not always the case. Visibility and technical challenges. This more has to do with our site. And so these are more technical in nature. For example, when a family enters into the process, they have to scroll all the way to the bottom to hit this submit button. If those submit buttons were in a more easy spot, then we wouldn't have families who say, no, I did go through this. Why am I nowhere to be found? Well, because they didn't submit. It's often because of these like little, just frustrating and shouldn't be there technical challenges, but they do exist. And then the final thing that we're not the final thing, there are two more things. We're looking at making changes to the future. One is related to this idea of transfer that happens it primarily affects high schools, but the way that we see this manifest is a student will come to, let's pretend, Bend High. They come to Bend High as a 9th grader, and then they are in 9th grade, they don't like their experience for a number of different reasons. And then all of a sudden they want to change. And so then they are in our process and they're changing like at 10th grade or they're changing 11th grade, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. That's problematic because ultimately we're setting students up at the level to be connected to a counselor. We're setting students up to be connected to a course of study. We're setting students up to have this sort of comprehensive experience that then is altered because people are wanting to make a change. And a couple of other things happen with that. About 50% of the time, and that's a loose number, but I will say it's a generous amount of time, the change has to do with athletics. Now, folks know that we don't make ACRs based on athletics, but when you dig into the process, you'll recognize like this student didn't make this team and they want to make this team over here. And so they want to make this change in their high school experience. Or they have had another type of experience that they didn't like and they want to leave. And so then what happens is if they then find themselves in a new school, now they're trying to make new connections, which is a challenge just for that student. But then also there's kind of a narrative that lives outside of the school where that family or student are saying things about their previous experience that school is never able to hold, deal with, understand what went wrong or handle. And so all of our administrators are sort of shocked when that happens, and they really care about their schools, their systems, and they want to make sure that things are going well for students. And so they want to know what has happened. And so they want to have this kind of check and balance that happens if a student wants to leave within 9th to 12th grade, and really any band, because they want to do something about it if they were dissatisfied for any reason. From an athletic standpoint, there are implications for athletes who leave within their high school experience, and we want to make sure that they are not charged some sort of penalty with their ability to participate in things by virtue of them sort of cutting and running or making a change during this process. And that does happen because people aren't aware of what those sort of balances are. So what we've done is we've created a situation where if a student wants to change, they need to have a meeting with an administrator and in some cases with the athletic director to sort of do an exit interview to say what's going on, what was your experience, and what causes you to be interested in making a different change. Again, that preserves the sort of educational experience for that student, and it allows our schools to take responsibility for anything that they feel like they need to change. So the final thing I'll leave you with is that we know that our process in the past has been January is our window, and then we review, families live in this zone of wait list, we review in May and June and August. And instead what we are looking at is having two finite periods. And so what we're looking at doing is having a January priority period from which we can staff. and then one that's later in the summer that allows us to say, okay, you've moved to the area late. This is kind of, we have a couple of openings. We're going to make these moves happen, and we're going to open up a short-term window that then would allow anybody to enter in. So nobody lives on a wait list unless you are in a choice option school, which is a true wait list. And you are actively saying, yes, I want to be part of a new lottery for this span of time. It also allows families who are new to the area to be able to participate in this, but it allows these things to be accomplished before the start of the new year. And often that really is the very first day in August is when athletics start to be part of the picture. And so students really don't have the ability, if they participate in athletics or activities, to change once we get too far down that road. Okay, so that's a lot, very kind of high level, but I'm happy to entertain or try to entertain any questions. Next slide.
Directors? Director Tomlin, do you want to go first since you're online? If you have any questions?
Sure. Yeah, Lisa, I just was curious. I noticed last year the number of requests were significantly higher at all levels than they were this year or next year. Is there a reason for that?
You know, not that I can point to. I think sometimes that has to do with our like notifications to our families. I think our comms team has really done a good job in recent years to sort of make sure that people feel prepared. So that may be a factor in this. But no, I don't have anything that I can really point to specifically.
And then my other question, I guess, is I'm assuming that when a family gets denied their request, that they get an explanation of why the denial happens?
That's actually not necessarily true. They just get a denial because pretty much it can be a number of factors that came before them, which is really sort of hard to say, this person got in because of this person got in because of this. But primarily we've moved toward, really right now our reality is that siblings and employees tend to take the bulk of those that end up being approved. There are some exceptions to that. But no, typically it says denied, and then it will have, in our future, it will say, you know, if you would like to continue to want to be included in a new lottery, that next window will open in June, for example.
Thank you.
Directors?
Thank you for this. I had just a couple. It looks like about half of the requests that come in at almost all levels are other. And presumably those are outside I actually, and maybe you could just explain, is other a legitimate, like should a family who applies and they don't actually, you know, sort of have one of the considerations, should they expect to be approved or?
Honestly, no. I mean, at this point, it is very unlikely that people are approved beyond what I just described. Other is, it does allow, though, families to sort of say, here are the unique things about my child. And families really put a lot of information in there. And those are all considered, but they aren't considered before the sibling component and employee component. Those tend to be our first ones.
Okay, and I think just back to the question that Director Tomlin asked about the denial reason, I'm not sure I understood the answer to that. So we do not tell people why they were, so we don't say, you were denied because we ran out of room, or you were denied because you did not meet one of the priorities. We don't say that to families?
We would say that theirs was declined if they did not, like if there was a problem with sort of their actual request form. But otherwise, if they were not approved otherwise, it is because of space. And no, to my knowledge, well, it depends. I think there has been time when we have put that very specific thing related to space in the email, but pretty much it is like there's a decline.
And
So
then,
moral of the story is no.
yeah, I think that, the other question that we seem to get a lot is about this, this sort of size factor. And I'm wondering if it would be possible, like, is it possible to sort of, front load this? Like, look, we're forecasting 1,264 kids at Summit next year. That means that, we can take an extra 62 kids, 5%. Like, that's what we have. Just, is there a way to be more transparent about that? Or is it not worth your time because there's so much moving around that happens? I guess to your point about like families who show up in the district, my gut would be that there would be an equal number of families that would also like leave the district, but maybe that's not a fair assumption.
Yeah, to be honest, that's one thing. Steve and I were talking the other day that's one thing that in the next year we really want to do a lot tighter tracking on who does. What types of numbers are we talking about from the end of January into the August date? Like, who does come in and how many people are we sort of trying to adjust for? And because we don't know that, it does make it very hard for us to land on a number and say, this is the number that we're getting to. We're looking at that broadly. We do have that in mind broadly, but then it ends up being kind of a one-to-one when we get down to the nitty-gritty. So to your point, I think we can probably be more specific around generalized numbers. I think there are dangers in that too, but I can certainly entertain that idea.
I think too, and I would like you guys to research this, I am pretty sure that we cannot deny a child the right to attend their neighborhood school. By law,
Absolutely.
That part, yeah.
regardless of what their parent form has filled out or whatever. Like
Well, they wouldn't fill out a parent form.
No, an ACR. So I'm just
they
saying, like,
can
if
fill it to
someone
their school.
ACR'd and they didn't get into their ACR change request school, we cannot deny them admission, back into their home neighborhood school.
Oh, yeah, they'll go, that's where they automatically
Okay, maybe I
default
just
to.
missed, it sounded like you said something about, what would happen if you got declined, and maybe
No,
I just
I-
misunderstood. Okay.
One of the things I want to speak to about this is that when you have ACRs going back and forth from school to school, you wind up with a little bit of a butterfly effect that is hard to predict what that number might look like. And it truly is variant. Like, one year it'll be lots of folks want to go this direction. I'm speaking mostly at the high school level because that's where we see the biggest challenges. And then the following year, they want to go the other direction. And so this idea of different families wanting to know, well, there's 75 seats available at, let's say Summit. Summit has 75 seats available. Well, if Summit has 75 seats available and 40 Summit families want to ACR into Mountain View High School, then you actually have potentially 115 seats available. And so we could do that. I think we could target that, but I think it's also, it's one of those things that the day after you say those numbers, they're probably no longer accurate.
I think one other additive factor that's similar to what Steve's talking about is that our numbers are really challenging to get a true handle on, because when we look at our spreadsheets of like, this many students want to go to Bend, this many students want to go to Summit, really one student can choose 3 schools. And so that comes up as 3 different spots, and it looks like 3 different kids, and it's not. And so it's not this idea of clarity around numbers that we have really, really is slippery. It's a very challenging thing, and it ends up literally being a one by one task.
Yeah, I mean, your numbers, it's remarkable, that 2 school years ago, 82% of the Bend High ACRs were accepted. This year, it's down to 50%. And 2 years ago, that was, more than double the number of kids. Like, it's a huge, it's a huge variance from year to year, especially when families with multiple children, are watching the same system and seeing completely different outcomes from year to year. And I do think that part of this, it may help, I guess. I would say it may help to try and work towards setting expectations about enrollment and ACR availability and like some of that, as we know it. Is it going to be 100 or 300? Those are huge numbers, huge ranges, that could set expectations more carefully.
But I also want to say, Director Lynch, this conversation is helping educate our community, because the whole time I've been on the board, we've never had this conversation. And so it's always been kind of this process that's a little bit nebulous and unclear. And so I hope our community is listening, and when people are asking questions about how ACRs work, we can refer them back to this. I just had 2 quick questions, Dr. Burke. One is, I'm assuming that the wait list is a tech issue, that once you review it from pending, it just goes to wait list, like we can't leave it as pending?
Right.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I love when tech is supposed to help us, but somehow doesn't. And then you were talking about true lottery programs, and I'm assuming as well that siblings are still taken into account there? Yeah,
They
okay.
are. Yeah, and so there's a way to wait within the system. But because we have a true number on seats, we're able to run it in kind of a more traditional way.
Okay, so like if a sibling, there's a second grader at Amity and a kindergartner coming in, is that kindergartner then not guaranteed? They're just weighted in the lottery? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there have been times, more recent times, when we've had to say no to both employees and siblings, depending on the school. And so we are, getting crunched in different ways. The other thing that is unique about our systems is that, so like Bear Creek is a good example. So Bear Creek is a choice option, but it actually ends up running 4 lotteries. And the reason it runs 4 lotteries is because there's a preference zone and there's outside of the preference zone. And then DI is made up of 50% native English speakers and 50% native Spanish speakers. And so to enter into the lottery, we have to have accuracy about students' home language. And that's all done like in a one-to-one process with our team. And so they vet the language, then they place the student into the lottery bucket, then that day is run. And honestly, for programs like that, siblings really come to the forefront where they are kind of taking a lot of the spots. And so there becomes fewer and fewer spots. But the complexities are vast. I mean, I can't even describe every single thing that is so unique in this process. And the administrative tasks of it are wild also. And so we're trying to make things clear for families because we know that that's a challenge. We're trying to make things as transparent as possible. But it's with a certain degree of frequency that we'll get a call from a family that's like, my neighbor got in and I didn't. And I was the first one to, I had my stuff in that first day. And when we dig into like, what are the priorities, we recognize when that person got in and why they got in. That other family doesn't necessarily get to know the ins and outs, but it's just, I guess moral of the story is it's not as simple as like, I got in, I didn't get in. It is deep and, we've all got some feelings about this process.
So, I mean, in the interest of transparency, I guess going back to Jen's thought of, when there is a decision and a reason behind the decision, I guess I would suggest or appreciate that there would be something further than just denied. And I understand your idea of like, okay, that might be opening a can of worms, but at the same time, I just think that unless somebody goes through an appeal, and I don't know if once they go through an appeal, then would they get a reason? But I just think that would add greater clarity. And I also think it might prevent having, these, you know, I'm looking at nearly 300 for other. What is the other that they're not aware of how it actually works? Clearly, there's some confusion because you have
so
300 people
honestly,
applying. Sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I think most of the time, very honestly, the other is filled with whatever narrative the family wants to sort of like plead their case. And so I don't want to downplay that, but we have doctors writing notes to say this kid needs to go to this school because their friend is at that school, or the other is massive. It
It'd be interesting
truly
to
is.
know, just to kind of track that, and maybe you already are, to target like this, because this sounds like this is just taking so much time and energy. It's kind of like that maybe to see, I don't know, it'd be interesting to know, okay, how many is about friendships and mental health? And also I think that can be informative as well, just to know, not to change the prioritizing of how it works, but just to get more information about what our families, thinking as they're filling out that form. The other question I had, when you mentioned the athletics thing, and I don't typically think of that, but it makes total sense of like, if a student's, doing a cut sport, right? I do empathize, I understand it's not appropriate. On the flip side, I have heard of coaches recruiting students to big ticket sports programs, and I guess that just seems like a no-brainer to me, that how are we having that happen, whether coaches are doing that, on the down low, or they truly don't know. I don't want to, come to conclusions on that, but I guess I would really urge further clarification that that is just not acceptable. And I've heard about it in several different high schools. It's not just at certain schools that might come to mind, that really needs to be addressed. So I hear both sides with the athletics piece, but I just wanted to mention.
So are y'all implying that people lie? Oh.
Never.
Well, I think, I guess, Cameron, just to your point, we are addressing that. That is something that is our district athletic director, our, executive director for high schools, like that has been a very hard and fast, like this cannot happen. And we hear it happening from time to time. There's an interesting kind of interweaving that happens in Ben Lapine with our club teams as well. So some of that commentary happens not necessarily within our coaches, although that has from time to time happened throughout the years. But sometimes there's this just talk that happens in the club team level that influences some of those choices in a way that's just unfortunate. And, everybody wants the best experience for their kids. So I understand where that's coming from. And it is, it's not something that we can actively staff and say, here's how we're going to have an area change request process. We can't pin it on that.
Yeah, and I can imagine that with like the culture of club sports, right? Club teams. But I think particularly what I'm getting at is that coaches, right, are actively recruiting star athletes, whether it's through, these private clubs, or maybe that's what you're referring to. I was thinking of club like, Frisbee club, but maybe you're talking about club for like soccer and, okay, there we go. Thank you. The different kind of club that I'm thinking of.
Dr. Burke, thank you for this really quick. My only question, oh, sorry, my bad. Shirley, go, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Dr.
just
Director.
a quick note. I'm glad to hear that you're considering a second window, like late in the summer. From personal experience this last year, a family was transferred to Bend from Seattle, and they didn't really have any basic knowledge of the district and what schools were what and what a choice program was and so on. Took a while for them to get all that information. And then when they finally did get the information, they wanted to file an ACR. And it was way too late to make the change for this year. So if that second window allows for new residents, I think that's really important, or major changes, which could be a move also, major changes during the summer. So I commend that. Good luck.
Yeah, I think, you know, a layer of this as well has to do with a process that we have that's called inter-district transfers, right? So sometimes we'll receive students from Redmond or Culver or different areas. And that, like, on one hand, we would love people coming to our school district and we would love to welcome them. If they got into like a choice school wherever they happen to want to land, because they aren't living in our area, so they're going to drive to our area. If we allowed them to take a choice position from a family that's, you know, paying taxes in our district and they are part of Ben Lapine, but they now have one less spot because somebody from outside of our community takes that. That's a layer of this that is a challenge too. And so it's not like we can wait and never accept anybody from outside until the first day of school. Like, that's just not very realistic for families. But it is something that's in our thinking, because we would love to welcome people, and this process provides some real kind of pitfalls to that.
Directors, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Berg. My question only is this: is lying on the form automatically denial?
It hasn't been, but we then don't accept, or we don't allow for, you know, that area to be considered. Like, for example, if somebody says, hey, that my child's a sibling, we would look and say, okay, now you're in this priority group, and then we find out you're not a sibling. Well, now you're no longer in that priority group.
Okay. All right, cool. Thank you. Appreciate that. And now we will hear from our Chief Financial Officer, Dan Emerson, to give us our fourth quarter financial update.
For the record, Dan Emerson, Chief Financial Officer, and I've invited Nick Shane, Budget Director, up here as well, because we're going to be cruising into the budget topic right after this one. So efficiencies, we love it. Okay, so this is the fourth quarter financial update for fiscal year 25-26. It's based on actuals through June 9th, 2026. Projections of the district's general fund total revenues have not materially changed since the Q3 financial report. The current Q4 financial report shows total revenues ending at $255.2 million, which is only a $400K variance from the FY 25-26 revised budgeted number. So I have to say that's a pretty tight window. We did pretty good, 400K on 255 as we're looking at it right now. The state school fund revenue is projected to be $1 million less than anticipated due to the May reconciliation payment. We did have about $1 million reconciliation that we needed to pay back for the state for the year prior this year. This decrease in funding is offset by about $1 million more additional in earnings on investments. And so the interest rate environment out there is still fairly good for those that are investing, but not so great for those that are borrowing right now. And so we have offset our initial budget projections with $1 million more in earnings on investments. Are there any questions on revenues before I move on to expenditures? Okay. We forecast total personnel expenditures to be about $191 million. It is $4 million less than the revised budget. The savings is due to ongoing open positions that are currently unfilled despite our best recruitment efforts. And as I say, we strive to have low vacancy rates. However, this savings is financially beneficial given the current K-12 education funding landscape and the projected decline in BLS fund balance. Operating costs are estimated to be $44.9 million, or $3.2 million above fiscal year 25-26 revised budget. Escalating operating costs are primarily driven by increased transfers out needed to support and balance the curriculum fund due to its reserves being fully depleted and utilized in this fiscal year. So this is something that we've talked about during the budget meeting, and we'll continue to have to kind of increase that amount out to curriculum now that they have no reserves. Total general fund operation expenditures are projected to be $800K less than the revised budget. So with the known impacts to budget, we do project the fiscal year 25-26 ending fund balance to be $19.5 million. This is in line with the fiscal year 25-26 revised budget amount in the district's long-term forecast, and it's a reduction of $9 million from the current actual fund beginning balance. I have asked both my accounting staff and my budget staff, as well as myself, to look at this number to ascertain that we honestly believe that we are going to drop $9 million. And as of right now, that is kind of where all three of us individually have landed, that this is very likely that we will be in that $9 million, maybe plus or minus $2 million range. But as things come through, primarily payroll, we would not anticipate that we're going to be showing like we've shown the last couple of years, where either beginning working capital stayed flat or there's been an increase. And so this is part of a kind of a long-term pattern that I've seen since I came here, where my first year in the district, I think I inherited a beginning fund balance that grew for $8 million in the general fund. My actual first year, it was relatively flat, about $1 million. And then this year, as we projected in the long-term forecast, we are going to be decreasing substantially, and we do believe that that will be reflected in the ACFR, the annual comprehensive financial report. So this is unfortunate, but it is anticipated. It marks the first year in which we've seen expenditures significantly outpace revenues, and therefore the district is projecting to utilize large portions of fund balance to cover the cost of core services. Due to this estimated decline of nearly 1/3 of our general fund balance and its interplay with the long-term forecast, it was necessary to cut $7.1 million in the fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget to ensure financial stability in the near future. And despite the significant cuts in the fiscal year 26-27 proposed budget, we continue to estimate a consumption of fund balance in the future, although it's more managed and it's less. But finance staff will be continually monitoring projected fund balance closely as we move throughout the next fiscal year. Are there any questions or any comments related to that? It's a fairly large, it's a significant churn of events, I think, for our district financially.
Directors, before questions, I just want to emphasize the importance of what our CFO, Dan, just pointed out. This is a substantial cut into our fund balance. This is the first year under my leadership that it has decreased. This is exactly what we built the budget for, and for the 24-25 year, the 25-26 year. And this, having this turn out this way is actually good news. That means we've maximized a year's worth of resources to provide a year's worth of learning for all of our students. And I would tell you that this is a strategy that I believe to be a fruitful and intelligent strategy for how we manage the financial times we're in, where some districts are making massive $40-50 million reductions, and that impact is concentrated on a single year. That's the kind of, it's a strategy that essentially ignores, takes a massive bite out of the budget and then adjusts, and what it does is changes the trajectory of the experience of a student. And I think that's an important aspect for this, for you all to hear, and that's one that our finance team understands very much and talks with our teaching and learning team about what's the prudent way to do this over time.
Okay, so can you say a little bit more about the coming 3 fiscal years? Like, so what this, I mean, it sounds like what you're talking about is kind of a landing the plane situation on these fund balance reductions. Is the goal that we get to a place where we're flat, or maybe expanding our fund balance at the end of the year within the next couple of school years? And if so, how much longer do we need to prepare to eat into that fund balance?
Correct. So first I'd remind everyone that we have a 5% reserve policy. So what that effectively means is that somewhere around $13 million right now is the lowest amount of beginning fund balance that we could hold. Right now, we're projected at going into beginning fund balance next year at $19 million. So we're still over that. But you can imagine if we had to cut, or if we are projecting losing $9 million and we only cut $7.1 million, And with inflation and COLA, we're not going to have a flattened year next year, right? So we've cut into a lot of that, but we're probably going to have at least 1 to 2 more years, probably 2 more years of cutting, unless there are substantial changes to the SSF formula above and beyond the 11% average, unless the COLA comes in substantially less during bargaining, or those are pretty much the 2 largest factors on the revenue and expenditure side, or we went out for a local option levy.
Could you just say that, the first one more time, the 11% maximum? I just want, like, to say that sentence, the full sentence of what you mean by that.
I mean, I would be on the record to say that it would have to come in substantially more, the state school fund, than the 11% average increase over the biennium, which is about 5.5 and 5.5, although it's, and percent. Our expenditures would still continue to outpace our revenues at that point. And so, of course, we would eat into our beginning fund balance because expenditures are higher than revenue. The only way you can cover it is through beginning fund balance. Yes, exactly. And so that is why, unfortunately, with all the projections that we're doing, unless there's something out of the ordinary that we haven't seen, we will continue to eat into beginning fund balance and have to make cuts over and above how much we're eating into the beginning fund balance to slowly grow up beginning fund balance in the 2 to 3 year trajectory, just to make sure that we don't crash beneath that 13 million, have to take out a loan for, you know, cash basis for paying personnel in September and things of that nature. There's a lot there, yeah.
I also want you to know that I'm on a committee to help lead conversations about what administrators are going to be presenting to legislators about this very issue. We've got a lot of issues, and I will tell you that first and foremost, there's 2 things that continue to be the first point of conversation, and that is the continued underfunding of special education in the state of Oregon is first and foremost. No other item is anywhere close to that. The second one is continued refinement of the calculation of what is called its current service level, which is this idea that there is not agreement on what it costs to run school districts at the beginning of every school year, what that number is. And when you argue that whatever funding is being based upon, it should start with what the current rate it costs right now, so that we know what we're dealing with. And those, if you remember, 2 years ago, Governor Kotek added $550 million to adjust for the state's calculation because it was off that far regarding current service level. And so there's still more of that to come. I'm not even getting into things, and I'll do a little bit of that in my superintendent's report, like unfunded mandates and the fact that insurance right now is statutorily capped at 3.4. Health insurance is statutorily capped at 3.4%. Increase is the maximum increase they can provide to us. They cannot make the current insurance work for going into next year. And so the only way to make that now financially viable for OEB is to reduce coverage. And so those are the kinds of realities that we're facing right now. And I do not want to sugarcoat it, but I also want to make sure you know that we have a very capable and competent team and that we're managing this to the extent that we can.
And just to say a little bit more about Director Lynch's comment, I think our strategy is to go, you know, obviously, there's some other things from revenue perspective, whether it's a local option levy or from expenditure perspective, that we need to look at and wait until December to see what the SSF for the governor's budget is. But I think it is a 1, 2, maybe possibly more years than that, getting very close to that reserve level, about as close as you can get it, and then building it back up. And that is the strategy that Dr. Cook's talking to, that is optimal for student experience, so they don't have a large change in kind of their day-to-day experience with 1 year of massive cutting.
Just a comment about the 19 million, that's what percent?
It's about 1/3. So it's
okay.
it's a loss of 9 million on 28 million. So.
Okay. What's our goal? Is our goal still 10% for a carryover?
Our goal is to be financially stable, and I couldn't tell you what that. I would say our policy is 5%. Typically, in most budgetary years, we've carried over about 8%, 8 to 10%, and that feels fairly stable. I don't know that we won't have to do some kind of cash measures, loan, or something to that effect before we hit the 5%. We're looking into that right now. We're running our cash forecasting, which is separate from our long-term budgetary forecasting, out 2 to 3 years to determine when it hits to the point, and it probably is greater than 5%.
Just a reminder that a 5% carryover rate will not meet 1 month's worth of payroll.
Correct, yes. Thank you.
All right, Marcus isn't back, but I think we can now move into Resolution 2021, which is you again.
Sure. I just want to say we are monitoring it very closely. So although that was, not the brightest spot, that's the reality we are in, and we are working, our best monitoring it, ensuring that we make, the best choices possible with a contracting budget. So yes, moving on to the next resolution, that's for adopting the budget, as you guys were all part of. We passed the proposed, but we went over the proposed budget in March, and then in May, you guys, along with the entire budget committee, which includes our volunteer budget committee members, approved the proposed budget with no changes. There are no changes to the adopted budget as well, so this is legally adopting the budget per ORS and per Oregon rules and statutes. And so these resolutions allow you to levy taxes and finalize the budget. Thank you all for your contribution in that, and if there's any questions related to the budget before we go ahead with resolutions, please let myself or Nick know.
Directors, any other additional questions? Because I want to be able to go to the resolutions because we have to do these separately. Just want to make sure we know that. And whoever reads the motion, please make sure you just read it verbatim so we can definitely make sure we have everything ready to go. Any questions about Resolution 2021? Okay. There's no question. We entertain a motion for Resolution 2021.
I move to adopt Resolution 2021, which states, be it resolved, the Board of Directors of Administrative School District Number 1, Deschutes County, hereby adopts the 2026-27 budget in the amount of $580,664,622.
Thank you, Director Tatum. Is there a second?
My second.
Thank you, Director Tomlin. Now to have a second, thank you. We have the motion. Now call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes had it. Thank you. Now we will look at the motion for Resolution 2022.
I move to adopt Resolution 2022, which states, be it resolved, the Board of Directors of Administrative School District Number 1, Deschutes County, hereby imposes the taxes provided for in the adopted budget at the rate of $4.7641 per $1,000 of assessed value for the permanent tax rate and in the amount of $48,357,008 for bonds, and that these taxes are hereby imposed and categorized for the tax year 2026-27 upon the assessed value of all taxable property within the district.
Do we have a second?
A second?
Thank you, Director Fisher. I have a first and a second. Now call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Thank you, Mr. Emerson. Appreciate you very much. Thank you for your time as well. Now we'll pass it over to Dr. Cook for our discussion.
Thank you, Chair LeGrand. For item 10A, as you recall, in the May board meeting, you all adopted a board policy for fundraising. And we promised to come back with the administrative rules and regs that would live under that. And we have a batch of them for your perusal at this meeting. And so we have a lot of fundraising and donation policies. And if you recall, this has been a 2-year process. We have gotten tremendous feedback from the system, and we have proposed, I think it's 7 or 8 new policies for consideration. Because this has been such an in-depth process, and we've had so much input from families, and the fact that it's summer, we're going to push these out for a couple of months of feedback. And so would love to know if you have any interest on these. Please make sure you submit that information. We will be accepting feedback on these all the way until August 4th. And we would like to bring these back for your and others' consideration and the community's feedback all the way up until the August 11th board meeting. So
Director, do you have any questions or anything before? this
I
information
might
goes
add,
out?
I'm so sorry, I forgot about that. We will also be actively seeking engagement and opportunities for many of the groups that gave feedback on these already. We will be circling back with them and making sure that those groups have been a part of the process now that we've got draft policies in front of everybody.
Yes, Director Lynch.
Yeah, I have a few questions about just two of the policies that that I think would help community groups and teachers and school administrators who are going to have questions or want to submit feedback. Can I ask those now?
Absolutely. Can you identify, like, can we do it policy by policy so I can track where you're at?
Yeah, so on the KMCAP, which is the one that's like entirely new and entirely in blue, fundraising and donations.
Okay, I'm with you.
This one starts with the district developing and maintaining standard and operating costs for each, curricular or extracurricular program activity. Who's responsible for that? We had a number, last week we had a whole bunch of fifth grade celebrations, at our schools. Like, is that a thing that you're gonna have a schedule of operating costs for every school? And if so, who is responsible for developing that?
Yeah, I think, so it doesn't exist now. I will tell you that the first examples of that are things like monitoring the amount of money that's allocated through, we call it Fund 120, which is district money that goes into into athletic funds and then is allocated to particular sports. An example of that would be like the amount of money that is available for a baseball team, for example, to buy equipment for their teams. And so the idea would be that we would start to establish what those standards look like, what should each team expect from district funds, and then what would be the standard expectation for fundraising beyond that extension. And then, quite frankly, I think that's a good place for us to start for each of these kinds of programs and co-curriculars. And the idea of later on working with our boosters, once we've established some norms and understanding what that looks like, I think we're a good 3 or 4 years away from even talking about booster-related funds. We're just talking about getting internal controls built, and I think that'll be the starting place. And I would say we'll work our way from the most common types of athletics and extracurriculars that are going to have funds associated with them. We had a conversation today with some folks about the amount of money that was spent per sport and how we're going to start tracking that. And so that's our starting place. And I think until those standards exist, each step along the way, there's going to have to be engagement with our finance team, with our athletic directors, eventually with our coaches. And ultimately, when we talk about, and if you remember from the presentation, and Kinsey's welcome to jump up here if you want to join in on this, when we were presenting things like coaches from different schools, like let's just stick with baseball, coaches from different schools having completely different standards of experience for our athletes, where some places these student athletes are said and told, we want you to raise $1,000 each, and over here you don't have to raise anything. And so this idea of putting a box around that is what our very next steps are, and I think this policy is going to help us establish the processes for building that.
Okay, that's helpful. So just to summarize, the first line of defense is about investigating sports and teams, not things like the fifth grade pizza bouncy house celebration.
Exactly.
Okay, great, perfect. Can you give an example of, like, so then number 3, can you give an example of a fundraising effort that would fall under number 3? So like all internal and external fundraising and donation efforts and communications. It's just such a huge, do you mean?
So what number 3 means is that when donors want to provide funds in support of, let's use your example, the 5th grade end of this year celebration. What we would also be likely doing is allowing them, are you also willing to allow a small portion of your donation to be put in a centralized fund so that that money could be utilized for other programs that, as you all recall, there are schools that can go an entire year and can't raise $5,000 for any kind of programming. And so our intention is to step in this in a way that is an option for a donor, not a demand. And so if a donor is open to the idea of, like, I think it used to be, what is it? Do you want $3 of your taxes to go to the chickadee checkoff, right? For your federal and state income tax. It's a model, something like that. And then those dollars would go into a centralized location, and we would try to build a structure that allows some of those schools that struggle to raise those kinds of funds to have access to some resources as well.
Okay, so again, just to clarify, you do mean like dollars raised by completely separate, independent 501c3 organizations?
No, I mean, any donor that would be inclined, that wants to donate $50, $20, it could be anybody,
To the Lava Ridge
including
PTO,
501(c)(3)s.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then, can you say a little bit more, like, just back to sports? I personally don't know enough about how this works today. I do see job postings, you know, part-time volleyball coach, $5,000. How does this change affect coach compensation in the district? Are we worried about retaining coaches in this new world?
So I do not believe this is going to have a negative impact on our coaching. In fact, I think it's going to have a more positive impact on our coaching experience, because there's going to be clear guidance around what the expectations are. If you're going to coach a sport in the district, what are the limits and parameters around extra expectations around fundraising?
Oh, so maybe this makes their job a little easier, and so therefore, is that what you're trying to
I
say?
100% believe that to
Okay.
be true.
Okay.
Any other questions, directors?
Yeah, I have a few more.
Here we go.
There's this section down here that says fund disbursement.
Can you share with me where
It's the
you're
very
at?
bottom of that page, or I'm sorry, it's on the next page, at the very bottom. I'm still on that same policy, yep.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm with you.
So, no disbursement of funds will be permitted to the district until the minimum amount necessary to fund the project or activity as approved has been deposited to the correct account. So I'm back on my 5th grade bouncy house celebration. I guess, could you just explain a little bit more about how this is going to work in practice?
I don't know that I can do that with your 5th grade.
Okay.
Here's what I would say. What I would suggest is, if some, let's say that let's use an example of baseball again. Since I'm a former baseball coach, I can use that. Let's say that Lapine High School decided that they wanted to put lights on their baseball field. And they've got some of their funds available, but not the total cost. And they would like to get started on the work without having raised all of the resources. What this paragraph is speaking to is that there has to be an entire amount available to be able to fund a project before any funds would be dispersed to be able to start any kind of project, because there's lots and lots of situations where unexpected things come up and costs increase, and all of a sudden we have partial projects all across the district that would not be able to be completed. That's what that's about. I think,
Okay, capital projects.
not just capital, I think it's any time that there would be funds, like if you could just let us get started with a portion of those funds for any kind of project, but capital is one that's really easy to make examples of.
Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up just on that before you move on to your other questions? Because it just says that the money may remain for 1 year. Can you have a multi-year fundraising process then for a larger capital project without it reverting after a year?
So the answer is yes. It would need to have specialized dispensations for that to happen.
Okay, great. I want to talk about the KHKMC AR as well.
Gifts to the district.
So many gifts to the district of property and equipment originate from our teachers. Like donors don't tend, that's not true. Sometimes they do, but donors do not tend to just show up with like a classroom set of unasked for materials or textbooks, like that usually, so what do you consider the role of the school or the principal or the district in tracking these donation requests and making sure, because there's a sentence here that says, ensuring the equipment or services that are not likely to be acquired from public fund expenditures, like, that's not a thing a donor, I would expect them to have insight into, so like, what is explain like what the responsibility of teachers and principals is gonna be on this front?
There shouldn't be any teacher or administrator responsibilities. The only thing that they would have to do is if they get asked or want to fundraise, let's go back to Lapine High School. Let's say that Lapine High School says, instead of saying that we've got some of the money for the lights, they say, I've got a company that is willing to come in and install them for free. They will provide the work and the service, and they will do the donation in the form of labor. And because that violates our public proposal types of procedures for how we have to accept the work of others, that means we have to have a policy that says those kinds of donations have to be run through a system to be able to verify whether or not that's even an option. Now, that's one example. There would be lots of others, but that example is a good one, that if somebody comes in with their front loader and said, well, I can dig your holes for you, and then they were to cut a gas line or something like that, that's the kind of stuff that we typically have in a contract. And those things we do not sign off on contracts like that until they've been vetted by all the safety procedures we would want to do. And we're bound by a lot of laws that require us as a public school system to do that in a very public and transparent way.
Totally, that makes complete sense. You know, the Ben Lapine Education Foundation was here and talked about 114 classroom grants. That's like a set of boom whackers for one music class. It's not like dig a hole, you know, it's not like build lights, $200,000 lights on a baseball field. Like there's two things happening.
And I think let's use that as an example. If we were to buy, if somebody were to request from the foundation, for example, to buy some sort of something for a classroom
set of boom whackers.
That was an inferior product or something that was dangerous or something this is the language that prevents that from happening, then that we can say, no, you can't purchase something for $3,000 for a classroom set when an approved version of something like that costs $25,000, for example.
So then that would be on the teacher and the school to gate that?
That would be on the teacher. In the grant process, we would have to build systems that are, these are the things that are approved to be purchased from things like that, so that we aren't just freewheeling and dealing, I guess I don't know, that's the technical term of what I'm trying to explain here. So, Lisa, were you trying to jump in?
Yeah, I think, another example often where this can get kind of wrapped up is related to impacts with technology.
Yeah, totally.
And so it could be something where like a CNC machine or something that is big that is donated by somebody, but it is technologically incompatible with systems that we currently have. And so when that has happened in the past, then we find that a teacher is like asking us to buy a new system to allow for this tool and that's just not, we can't kind of play in that sandbox. So by virtue of having sort of a check related to, if you're going to accept something, you need to go through a process that would say, yes, I have all of the necessary things that would allow this to be a successful addition to our programming.
Okay, so again, that's on the teacher and the principal, the building administrator to handle.
That's true already, whether the funds are donated. This policy doesn't change that process. That is the kind of thing that exists already. And the policy is just how would manage that with donated dollars.
Okay, great. And then there's this policy goes on to talk about like forms, like a gift to the district form. And I'm curious, like, again, like, who did we envision filling that out? Was it a principal, a teacher? Who?
Show me where you're
at. It's like right there, if you just keep scrolling past.
Yeah, it's the last document in there.
It's not, it's like, it's sort of part of the same policy, KMC-AR2.
Yes, draft 2.
Yeah,
Wouldn't that
this
be like
form,
if Breadloaf is gonna donate 18 guitars to a classroom and?
Right, so Breedlove donates 52 guitars. Like, who fills out this form? Each principal who received them, or?
yeah, somebody's gonna have to fill out that form. It could be the office manager, it could be the donor, it could be the principal. I think it's circumstantial. It's the idea of the district is responsible for whatever lives in that classroom. And so this idea of creating some level of tracking on it, because right now, that doesn't exist.
Would these forms be required for, let's say, a small donation? So like, for example, my son's food class, they wanted to make buttercream frosting. And he tells me, oh, we're not making buttercream frosting because we don't have butter. And I was like, Dean, I got 4 pounds of butter frozen. If your teacher wants it, you can take it to school. Does something like donating butter mean a form like this has to be filled out? Or is there a monetary value associated with it?
We've never had this form before, so we're gonna find out. I would suggest
there
that there's
needs to be
going
more
to be a
parameters.
pragmatic implementation of this.
Yeah, because, there are small donations all the time. Like, a teacher is like, oh, I need some snacks for my class, and parents donate snacks.
I think this is good discussion because I assume this is from the donor, but I think.
And I assumed it was an office manager who had to fill it out.
So to have some clarity,
Yeah.
so it's streamlined would be great.
This is not a new form. This has already been a requirement for a long time. We get these routinely. And so the format has been updated. This is, OSBA has similar, the language that's updated there is in alignment with OSBA. And so as mentioned, sometimes donors are a little more savvy, they fill it out. If they don't, then our staff, typically our office managers are the most aware of this and will fill it out as, kind of just receipt purposes and tracking. So this isn't a new form or requirement.
But do you have to do it for anything? Like if someone drops off some chips, do you have to fill this form out? Or is it more like money donations, larger donations? Or is it technically supposed to be filled out anytime someone brings anything to the school?
That's a good question. I think the way it's been used to date has been for items of value, sort of those items under, a nominal amount maybe aren't, I don't see those being consistently used here, but 18 guitars or, $5,000 worth of, a couple bikes for kids, that kind of thing is pretty routine.
Yeah, but maybe that needs to be clarified in the policy as you guys go
That
through
sounds
it.
like a good point of feedback, like, hey, we could maybe set some thresholds.
Yeah, because I don't want an office manager because my kid brings butter to his food teacher to have to fill out a form like this.
Yeah.
Or us, the donor.
Oftentimes this also is requested by the donor. So, if you think of donating clothes to whatever is your place of choice that you donate clothes to, oftentimes they'll say, do you want a receipt? Do you want a tax, receipt? And you may say yes or no. And so oftentimes when
request
they're
a
bigger
receipt for your
things,
butter?
that place will say, hey, can I have a receipt for that? And then there's some level of that that's just, something tells me you're not going to request a receipt, Amy.
And we do have a tax ID, like a letter we give for their tax purposes for those too.
Yeah, Dan's coming. Here he comes about taxes.
You gotta bring a chair.
Backside of this too that I want to talk about, as long as we're getting into the nitty gritty. From a gift perspective, as Dr. Cook indicated, a lot of the donors, even if it's an in-kind donation, maybe not a thing of butter, but they do want a receipt. And so this form has existed, it goes up the chain, they fill it out, it comes back to accounting. Accounting, we have very specific rules about how we account for donations, and so we use that form as evidence that a donation occurred and then book it on our side on the general ledger. And so we can look into, I'm not familiar what the asset value is for that, but we can look into see what would kind of trigger an in-kind donation. But typically, I think this is something that comes from the donator wanting to get some tax credit with relation to it.
But don't we just want to get it right? I mean, I guess the question is, it sounds like there's a lot of uncertainty, and I feel like since we're already revisiting these, we might as well just get the clarification set. because if we have office managers or donors who don't know exactly what the protocol is, it just keeps this cycle going of confusion and not staying on track, in my opinion.
I don't know that we've seen confusion with it internally. It's used pretty consistently. I don't think we want to write something where, you know, the donor filled it out and then we have to have the office manager go refill it out because our policy said the office manager has to fill it out. And so it needs to get filled out and submitted by someone. We're accountable to make sure that happens. If the donor did it, we don't need to redo it. So I think finding the sweet spot in there is.
I'm
Yeah,
only
I
mentioning
think-
this just because if I've donated a bunch of stuff, to which I've had, I've never been asked to fill this out. Is that, am I going against protocol, or is the classroom teacher going against protocol? Like, so I think it's just, if we're all on the same page, I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing if I'm buying a bunch of classroom books or donating something. And I think that's what I'm bringing up.
I think what I typically see there is someone's filling it out behind the scenes to accept it and document it for Dan's processes. Those are yours now. And then if the donor requests a receipt for tax purposes, then you'd get a letter. We have a letter saying, here's our ID number and all that kind of stuff. So if you as donor didn't fill it out, it's happening on the back end because it's for us. If you want something for your documentation, we would give you that separately.
Well, but do we know that it's happening on the back end? Because small donations might not be. So that is the point of clarification.
I think we can.
I want to talk about that for a second. I think that's part of what we're looking to get to is this idea of we're not interested in asking for a receipt when you bring in 2 bags of chips or a tray of muffins, and nor will that be a part of this conversation. But this idea of if you buy 18 guitars, that's a completely different set of criteria, and that's what we're working out with this.
And I was just going to say, I would guess that either in the accounting handbook or some other area, we probably have a tangible number that is an asset number for donations that we book. I'm just, unfortunately, don't have that number in my head right now or that audit guidance. So we can find that, and if it exists, we can certainly send that to you so you have this answered.
But I think a good barometer is a good benchmark. OSBA, I think when we were at OSBA conference, when they talk about gifts and donations as board members, they do a thorough job of giving us insight on what that looks like and things we have to fill out, forms we can and can't take, so on and so on. And I know they do a great job of sending that over to be able to have that, maybe a good barometer to be able to utilize that in some way.
That's a whole separate policy around gifts that employees can accept, I think is the parallel to that. And that is documented there's lots of guidance on that piece specifically too. So yes, this is related, but a little distinct in that way. I think a piece of, and it's not new language in this form or in the AR that mentions this form, but that is something that will be procedurally and just training-wise, something we clean up is when we accept a donation of 20 guitars to X school, do we, what, does that school just get them? Do we have an obligation to, maybe not in that example, but in other examples for Title IX purposes to, distribute them a little bit differently? And some of that's a conversation with the donor. Hey, did you know that there's maybe a school over here who could use some of those? Are you okay if we put a portion of those over there? And we reserve the right in this to do that where there's a need and or an obligation or a duty on our part to do that. And so that's not new language, but that just is an important piece of this conversation.
Thank you, appreciate it. Director Lynch, do you have any additional questions?
I
or-
just was thinking, I appreciate this 2-month generous feedback period. Unfortunately, we just lost all of our students and many of our teachers. I'm wondering if you'd consider making like a 1-pager or even like a list of bullets that summarize how these policies would be impacted, or how the most common types of fundraising activities that we do in this district would be impacted by the policies. Just something like our PTOs, that one comes to mind first. Hey, PTOs, here's the things that we're going to expect you to do once these are fully in in application. Same with athletic boosters. Like, again, I will profess my full ignorance about how coaches are compensated today, how stuff is purchased. Like, maybe these people already know, but like, again, like, here is what we see that will be different. It's just like 5 bullet points. Student councils and And then there's these groups that are completely unaffiliated with any school at all. So Sparrow comes to mind, and the Ed Foundation, like, they don't have like a school, you know what I mean? They don't have a school affiliation, but it does sound like there would be some impact here. Like, just that would help those folks give you feedback that would be, I think, more actionable than rather than them attempting to interpret 7 documents. And I know there's still one coming too, an 8th document.
Yeah, thank you. As mentioned earlier, we have a plan to really actively engage, not just sort of leave it over summer open for feedback. We have a plan to go back. There's groups that have been really engaging with us over the last 2 years and have been waiting for each of these updates. Many of our students in our Student Voice Council and then members of our Equity Coalition are going to be working on this over the summer at their choice. They wanted to keep engaging over the summer on this, including a few of our seniors who graduated and want to just see these issues through. And then some of our PTA leadership groups and other groups are also continuing to engage on these pieces. So I'm happy to kind of summarize what that plan has been so that you know what that looks like and can see that it is more than just sending out a list of letters to the community. And yeah, we can certainly work on summarizing. Some of it is a little more conversation-based too versus just documents.
Yeah, my only concern is just the summer feedback timeframe because so many people are gone. So I'm relieved to hear that like we're still engaging with students over the summer. I just would love if we don't get good feedback because it's summer that we don't have August 11th board meeting as the end date if we do feel like it needs to stay open for, you know, people coming back into town to really make sure we get these policies right since they are so important.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's kind of our target at this point, but we've shifted a few times in the process based on engagement and need. We've had coaches in particular share that like during their busy season is really, you know, which is every season of the school year for most of our coaches, is really hard for them. And so I think there's actually some advantage to doing it while there's a little bit of downtime for people and long enough downtime that, you know, in between vacations or travel plans, people can kind of bite at this when they're able to. But certainly if it looks like it's crickets, we would respond, keep it open longer.
And I would just like to remind us all that this has been an ongoing process for 2 years, and this is the exact reason why we've been so deliberate about this and will continue to be. And I will tell you that the distance that we have from even these policies and impacting the actions of boosters right now is still pretty large because we're just trying to focus on student body funds and getting our systems ready right now. And so that's kind of this first step, and we've got to start somewhere. And so this feels like the right place to start, and I assure you that we'll be talking about fundraising for at least 3 more years.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you very much. The thing I love the most about this is period is that we're getting all the gray and the minutia out the way. If you got pinpoint exactly where these things are going to go, and I appreciate that. The only thing I have again concerned about really quick is the student fundraising activity piece and the student body funds. If you read both of them, they're similar in scope in the way they read. Is there a possible way we can maybe combine those to kind of, I don't know if we can make it a joint thing, or does it have to be separate? Because if you read them, they're just basically one paragraph each, you know? So I just would like, is there a way we can basically consolidate some of those things? All right, that was the only thing I had in terms of concerns. All right. Other than that, directors, any other questions? Director Tomlin? All right. We're gonna move on to our next agenda. Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you, Kenzie, appreciate it very much. We're gonna be moving over to superintendent evaluation, and I'm actually leading this portion. At our May 12th board meeting, the board adopted a timeline for the superintendent evaluation process. Part of that process to adopt the tools or forms for the upcoming evaluation, as well as discuss with the superintendent the desired criteria for the upcoming evaluation and to adopt that criteria. The form we initially adopted on May 12th meeting are included in the board packet. Is there any discussion on the proposed forms?
So my only concern about the forms is the line that the board does not evaluate operational methods, administrative style, or day-to-day decisions, except as they relate to policy compliance and goals achieved, which, like, yes, but our executive limitations do have operational components, right? Like, you shall not fail to do this or that. We've talked about a potential 360 evaluation, which would be looking at administrative style. And I just don't love that line because it makes it seem, and this is obviously Let me be very clear. I have zero concerns about Superintendent Cook's administrative style or how he treats staff. But if there was a superintendent in the future who was engaging maybe in behavior that came out in a 360 review, just having that line in there then say, oh, well, we can't talk about potential, superintendent harassing a staff member, for example, or if there was a pattern. So I would just love to remove that sentence because I don't think it's needed and I think it already is covered in executive limitations.
Directors, any other discussion or conversation?
I'm happy to vote on that once that's removed.
So I just want to point out that it does say, except as they relate to policy compliance and goals achievement. I would tell you that, thank you for that assurance that this isn't about my performance. I would tell you that you've got very explicit criteria in the executive limitations. You also have very explicit criteria that exists in the contract. And so what that language, what that sentence would be referencing is something that is external to any of those or external to the contract. So I would say that you're still going to have all of that authority based upon the way that sentence is done. That sentence is probably more of a protective sentence for the superintendent than it is as a limiter for the board. Basically, what that would be is similar to language that exists in a superintendent's contract that says the board can't randomly choose other criteria outside of agreed upon criteria to terminate the superintendent or evaluate the superintendent. And so I'm not necessarily married to that sentence,
Yeah,
but I want to make sure that that was clear.
Yeah, I just don't think it needs to be there, and I think it potentially could set us a board up if there were a superintendent in the future. So I'm just not comfortable with that sentence being there, and I don't think it is needed.
Directors, any other conversation about this particular sentence before we
Can I-
move forward? Yes, go. Yes,
You're not voting on this, but I
Not
think
yet.
if you're just generally in consensus, this is still in draft form, we would
Right.
make that recommendation, we can make those changes.
Thank you, appreciate it.
So, I mean,
Yeah, we haven't voted yet on
yeah,
it.
well, you're not voting on this. I think this is
We're
just
just voting on the
discussion.
process. I think we're voting on the process is what we're going to be voting on later.
I also just want to make clear, I think it's clear as I wrote tentative, but all of those criteria that have actual numbers next to them, it is highly likely that those numbers, it's like 99% likely that those numbers will change. This is more just a current look at what you would be likely seeing. So I just want to make that clear.
So before we move on, I just want to make sure we have consensus that the ask is that we strike that sentence from both of the forms, the tools for the superintendent evaluation.
That would be my
A couple head nods is all we
Desire.
need to move.
I part of me thinks that the top of it is enough. Like I see you, I mean, we also don't evaluate, your wardrobe, right? Like there's a lot of things that we aren't going to evaluate. We are going to
No.
evaluate the things that are on this list, your goals, and I think by goals we mean as defined within your contract process. And, and then everything else. And this is what we do. We do these three things.
So do we have a consensus from the board that we want to strike this line? Remember, it's still in draft form. It's going to be, if you go to the evaluation criteria or to the tool, it says it right there. Is there a way to put it up?
Yeah.
I'm waiting on the rest of the directors. Hold on. Let's see. Director Chadwick.
If people agree to strike that.
Director Tomlin, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I don't see an issue with leaving it in, but I'm fine if it comes out as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I echo Ross.
Director Olson? Okay,
Fine.
cool. Director Lynch, just want to make sure. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Can I also, I want to draw attention, so we're good with that. I want to draw attention to the template.
Yep.
And I want to talk just a little bit about the targets that you're seeing in this. This document, and when it's completed, what I want to assure you is that that, remember, all of these in the template are the targets as relate to Senate Bill 141 criteria.
Right.
And there is target setting guidance coming out from ODE. That's what we've attempted here. Lisa's done a really nice job of taking a first run at this. What you will get as a final document at some point in which all of this meets the expectations that is set forth in Senate Bill 141 are the target setting process that aligns with, remember, the aspirational goals that ODE has set from the governor's recommendations are to happen over time, right? Like, so by, I forget what year, 2032, we're supposed to be at, I think, 80% on 8th grade math, for example. And so there is a target setting process to take you from current state to desired state over time. And that's the way the target setting process is going. It is a work in progress, not because of Ben Lepine's lagging in our procedures, but because ODE still hasn't agreed to, and we want to match them up. And we want to make sure that we are in alignment with that process. And so when she talks about those being changed, there will be a point in time in which we are confident when we present those data to you that we are saying, this matches the Senate Bill 141 criteria. So anything you want to add, Lisa?
The timeline for that is it must be submitted to ODE by August 31st. And prior to that, it has to be shown to the board. So the board is not approving that, but I will be bringing it to all of you to say, hey, here's what you can expect. Here's what this means. Here's where we currently are, all of those components. So you'll see this again with far more refinement than what you see right now. But right now it's just intended to say, as you all have requested in the past, we will be looking at a specific target rather than just strategic initiatives rather.
Thank you. Dr. Burke, appreciate it. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing that there is no additional discussion, we now entertain a motion to approve the evaluation criteria tool.
I will now entertain a motion to approve the evaluation criteria and evaluation tool as discussed.
Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any additional discussion on this motion that has been made? All right, now call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you very much. The ayes have it.
I just want to appreciate the work. This is a year's worth of work, and I am so grateful that you all took this on. It will serve this district for many years to come. Thank you for that effort.
No worries. And now Superintendent Cook will have the superintendent report.
I have so much to talk about. Oh my, I'm so excited. I want to start with, first of all, thank you all for your active participation in graduations. We just graduated 1,340 students. It was amazing. And I am so grateful you guys could share your time with our students. Just a whole lot of celebration and just glad to be a part of that. My second item, I just want to remind us that this is in my first, out of my 5 years of building budgets in this district, this is the first year that we've actually seen a decrease in fund balance, $9 million to be exact. And I do want to fully call out that that is, there's all kinds of reasons why that's happening, and that we are continuing our advocacy work with Salem and our work in ensuring that the funding is going to continue. This was a tough budget year. We did not cut jobs, and I'm so proud of the fact that we didn't have to riff any individual positions, but we also had to shuffle a lot of people around to make this budget work. And we will be right at about $7 million reduced in funding or in costs for expenditures for next year because of that. And we still have so much work to do to focus on unfunded mandates, CSL calculation, special education funding, and things like paid leave Oregon and unemployment that we're now paying that is 500% of what it was only a few years ago is 4 years ago. So just more to come on that. I'm very excited to announce Jessica Scott, Monica Hansen, and Tony Sanchez as new members of our leadership team. Jessica will be principal at Miller Elementary School. Monica Hansen will be the principal at Skyview Middle School. Tony Sanchez will be our new CHRO. There will be a little bit of overlap between he and Susan Rodriguez. in that process of transition. We're excited for him to come. And just wanted to note that we also lost an employee recently. Keith Bowers suddenly passed away from medical complications due to a stroke. A longtime employee for us, excellent transportation, lead mechanic, and led that team. We'll feel that loss, I can tell you that. Next, I just want to thank some of you who were able to participate with this on this. It was called Community Engagement Bingo. We kicked this off last year at the leadership launch. Shout out to Kinsey for helping us organize this. These, if you recall, this was a bingo card of just different ways our community facilitates outreach to folks in our community, things like Bethlehem Inn or the Giving Plate, or how to use our internal CET transportation system to get around town, and doing home visits, things like that. It has been, I would say, a tremendous success. Many of our administrators across the district took advantage of that. Several of you came to events. We are going to continue to do that again next year. We'll expand that list. I invite you all. I was able to make quite a few of those visits. It is meaningful engagement with our community, with LCA, you name it. I strongly recommend that you jump on and participate in this when you can. It is worth the time and effort. My next to last one is Plant Moran is finishing up the first round of the supports they've given us. If you recall, we brought them in to help us restructure some of our departments and to get us set up for success with regards to building our HRAS system and an ERP system so that it matches the needs of the district. And we're finished kind of with this phase one. So we've done some reorganizing internally in our finance department and in our HR department. Most specifically, our HR department took the largest amount of that. There will be some changes. We'll be communicating that with you all here shortly. I'm very excited about that. The timing on that as well. We'll be starting off July 1st under Tony's leadership with a completely different structure. And we'll make sure you guys are looped in on that as well. And last but not least, I'll do this again next month, but just want to invite you to our leadership launch kickoff, August 11th. If you can make it, we would love to have you be a part of that. Excited about our upcoming year. Glad to answer any questions if you have any.
Directors? All right. Thank you, Dr. Cook. We'll now open the floor for board comment. I'm going to start with Director Tomlin, who's online.
Thanks, Chair LeGrand. I just want to, thank all the teachers and staff in the district for all the hard work they've done all year, helping the students, working with them, making this a successful school year. I hope everybody gets a time to get away and recharge their batteries and have a great summer.
Thank you. Director Olson?
I would just thank Director Tomlin for those comments, and I agree.
Thank you very much. Director Lynch? Oh, okay. Hey, Director Chadwick?
I'm good, thank you.
No worries. Director Fisher?
Yeah, I just want to mention it was a pleasure to go to 3 graduations and the celebrations. I think this district does a really great job of celebrating our graduates. And whether it's through social media or the actual events, I really appreciate how special they are. And they're all really different. And I like that, being able to see that school culture and the personalities of schools. And then I also want to give a shout out to Kinsey and her team with the Equity Coalition update. And that long description was really helpful. And then also with Lisa going through the ACR, I think this is something we wanted to hear for a while about the ACR confusion. And that was really helpful and got me thinking. Thank you.
I feel like every year at this board meeting, I just say again how thankful I am for our staff and our students and that we have finished another year. And I love attending graduations. I am totally the dork up on the stage crying, even though I don't know a lot of the students. But I got this year to go to Lapine on Friday night, and then I did all 3 of the big high schools on Saturday. And they're so lovely. Like, I love them. I love them so much. It's why we do this work. So I'm just gonna say that. Happy summer, everybody. Enjoy.
Well, thank you, directors. Thank you for those kind of words to our staff and to our senior leadership and to our superintendent and our deputy soup, to our board clerk, Bojanowski, to our communications team, to everyone across the district for all their hard work throughout the year. We appreciate it very, very much. You make us look great as a board, and I really, really appreciate that. The only thing I want to definitely conclude with is I really loved one of the speeches at Bentech Academy. The young man who wrote the poem, it was phenomenal. It was probably one of the best poems I've heard in a long, long time, and it was really great to hear his words. He says, "I don't like doing speeches, so I wrote a poem for this occasion," which was phenomenal. And I think he did a great job, and I think that young man is going to receive $220,000 to work with the Navy. So he's going to be great future ahead of him in terms of the things that he's going to be able to do. But the one thing I want everybody to forget too, this Friday is Juneteenth. Remember, we are celebrating the liberation of people who were enslaved, not only in Texas, but across this country. Let's not forget the things and many things that they brought to this country and the contributions that many of the people who were enslaved have done, but at the same time, the things of generational creativity and things they've created over the years, and continue to look at those different pieces. Our next regular business meeting is scheduled for July 7th. With that being said, this meeting is adjourned, and everyone have a great and safe summer. Thank you. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Mr.